creative person has a special gift, his private vision of the world. Through words, ideas, images, he touches our view of the 20th century.
On Air India's Boeing 707, flight AI-1068, from New York, London, Frankfurt, Geneva, Cairo, and Bombay.
This man is a film director. He lives in India. Though his background is Indian, there are many Western influences in his work. Though his films are Indian, they have reached out to a worldwide audience. In them, a gallery of men and women depicts the shifts and conflicts of this century. The stories are of India. The human problems and emotions are universal.
Yes, I had a film at the festival. This is my latest one, Nayak, which means the hero. It's about a film star and study of what sudden wealth and fame does to an ordinary middle-class young man. It got the prize for direction, so I think it went over quite well. People enjoy it, seem to enjoy it. It just happens that I have had a film every year in some festival or the other over the last 8 or 9 years. So I've been to Moscow, I've been to Berlin 4 times, been to Venice. My first film, Portrait Marcelli, the first part of the trilogy that I made, got a prize in Cannes. I didn't go that time because we had no money. And then when I made the second film, that was sent to Venice, and I was able to attend the festival. And that got the Grand Prix. That has been a great help because I have a sort of a foreign market now, and quite a number of my films have played abroad, in Britain and the States. I've served on the jury at Berlin, in Moscow, in Brussels. The pace of the film, the very texture of the film is changing, and so there's a widening of thematic range. Along with it, a different mode of expression, which is dictated by the cutting and the use of the camera and lights. So I've been noticing really very deep and significant changes in the style of filmmaking. My route here in Bengal, and a trip abroad is good for looking up friends and taking a look at the latest films, but my work is here, and I was born in Calcutta and I was brought up. I love this city. I never want to leave it. I do feel very strongly about Western cities and the behavior of people in general that it's terribly mechanized. They're not their own masters, it seems sometimes. They're always guided by a timetable, and they have to stick to schedules. And whereas here, even in the city, people have, they're to a certain extent their own masters. They're not nearly as mechanized as in the West. And I feel there's more contact with living reality. I can quite see the foreigner's first reaction as he comes into the city as being somewhat unfavorable. For one thing, there's a lot of people and there's a lot of squalor, but Calcutta is not just that. It's got many facets, many aspects to it. It's an extremely rich and dense and complex city, and as a filmmaker, that is what mainly fascinates me, because even now I keep on discovering parts of the city which I'd never known before. It's very lively, and it's intellectually very alert, because we have a very strong theater movement, literary movement. There's always something happening, and people are reacting to events and situations in a very voluble fashion. Of course, it sometimes also leads to things like riots and such other unfortunate incidents, but that only shows that the people are in a state of constantly reacting to things. And as a filmmaker, I find this interesting. Ever since my first film, I've used both professionals and non-professionals, and also people who had never faced the camera or never even thought of facing the camera. When I write my scenario, I have each character I can sort of visualize, and I look for people, for faces, which conform to my visual conception of an actor. And if I find a professional who fits the part, I take a professional. If not, then I start looking around for amateur actors or non-actors even, people just whom I meet on a tram or a bus on the street. There's a belief that all children are natural actors, which they're not. I had great trouble with a boy in Pathirpachali. He was very shy, and I had to use all my patience, my persuasion. I treat them as adults. I sort of take them into my confidence and whisper instructions to them. And I find that after maybe the first day or the second day onwards, they're very obedient, and they do what I ask them to do. That's my method with children, and there are various other methods which I have to use with various other actors. It's never a set method with any actor. I've kept it sort of flexible. I get to know the person, and then I use a certain method which I think will work best in terms of that particular actor.
India, with its huge home market, is one of the world's largest film producers. There are studios in several cities, production in half a dozen languages.
Action!
In contrast to the flamboyant style of picture making common to India, Satyajit Ray works in a thoughtful, considered way. Every aspect of his production is planned, not always the case in Indian studios. From his actors, he seeks naturalness, authenticity, a total break from the high theatrical style of most Indian films.
Mr. Ray is wonderful to work with because he is very patient. When taking the scenes, he would explain the situation and ask us to act the situation the way we wanted to do. That is, he wouldn't dictate the way we should move our hands or put our heads in a certain direction. Not like that. He would just tell us that this particular character is feeling like this in this particular moment.
First of all, I was very reluctant to go into it at all because, I had that middle-class inhibition against being on the screen, though I had acted on the stage, but that was non-professional stage, of course. I didn't like the role either because the role in Pathirpachali, his first film in which I was, it was the role of a village wife. But when I started working with him, it was absolutely different. I got so much involved in it and inspired by the team spirit, you should say. I never felt anything was forced on me. The genuineness of the atmosphere and his direction as well. As a director, he wouldn't, he would just describe the particular scene or the emotion he wants me to do. And would just stand by and see how I can do it. So I also felt that I was contributing to the creation, to his creative effort.
Well, two leading young stars of the Bengali films, both discoveries of Ray, actor Sumitra Chatterjee and actress Madhubai Mukherjee.
She was being offered with a role that time. She only went there with the sole intention of meeting a great director, and she was very much impressed by him. The second time when you went there, you were offered with the role.
না সব রকমই যদি প্রথমে স্বাধীনতা দেন তারপরে যদি না পারেন
She says that he gives you entire liberty to perform in the beginning. He interferes only when you make a mistake or he wants to guide you or correct you in some direction.
Both in the studio and on location, Ray's work is well prepared. There's a steady output, 1 or 2 films each year. The tempo of rehearsal is calm, but quick. His actors and crew work smoothly.
When we are shooting in a studio, the shots are taken more or less as their plan because you're limited in terms of the set and angles.
আবার ওটাকে নিয়ে পড়েছো?
আপনি বললেন না মানে? হ্যাঁ, আচ্ছা বলো। বিচিত্র জীবী সাপ একটু কাছে নিতে হবে এখানে আমাকে। সাপকে জোয়া চলে না। আচ্ছা ঠিক আছে, ফাইন, ঠিক আছে, ফাইন, টেকিং, কাম অন, ওকে ফর সাউন্ড। On location, you are always improvising, finding new angles, making sort of last-minute decisions which affect the original shooting script, the shooting scheme, shall we say. So in a way, it's more exciting on location because you are being more inventive in a sense. Taking that? No, taking. Color cover down.
2 by 1, take 1.
Action.
এটার কি নাম দেওয়া যায় বলতো? আবার ওটাকে নিয়ে পড়েছো? হয় ওটিকে বিদায় করো আর তা না দাও।
While in the studio, which is not bad, perhaps, because you work more or less according to your plans, shooting plans, you see.
সাপকে দেওয়া চলে না।
Cut. Fine. আরেকটা নিয়ে নি ভাই, আরেকটা নিয়ে নি, just one more. এই হাতটা লাস্টে ওঠাটা না, আরেকটু রিল্যাক্সড, আরেকটু রিল্যাক্সড। While on location, even sudden sort of effect of light excites you, and you maybe have an additional shot or do the scene a little differently, or a sudden shower, or certain viewpoints which you suddenly discover.
Village India, seen through the lens of Satyajit Ray, has come alive for audiences in many countries. In his early films, it was the day-to-day life of rural people that he portrays. European films and directors, Jean Renoir, John Huston, gave Ray his early inspiration. Learning from the films of Europe and America, he achieved an insight into the life of India that no other medium could convey. Turning from the local scene he knows so well, Ray now thinks of more ambitious projects, international films, with big budgets and major stars. He's planning now a science fiction story to be filmed in India.
One could have the characters passing, and this has a certain atmosphere, kind of a meeting place with roads with a pathway from that side, one from that side, one from that side. It's a kind of a junction. And you have enormous big trees. You have the tamarind and the bow tree there. We consider it first from the point of view of the story, whether we actually need a place like this. It's nice. One could take a 360-degree pan here.
The power of his films comes largely from authenticity, character, and atmosphere. Seeking out houses, landscapes, villages, the precise look of a place he has in mind, Ray combs the countryside in his exacting search.
And it's certainly much easier working in a village than in a city, like Calcutta, for instance. সামনের গ্রামে যদি কোনো মন্দির পাওয়া যায়।
This isn't a fluctuating light.
The clouds are much better at that time.
Full-length film
Yes, I think, but by October I think it'll be much better because we won't have these passing clouds. And the paddy is lovely now. It's better now than when it's ripe. Otherwise it sort of tends to droop. You get the breeze playing on them now. I think we should get the camera out and take a shot here. I think we'll shoot it with the sun. It's so typical of the Bengal village. You see, we have to have a temple, either one or two together. And it's an inevitable part of the conventional Bengali village. And the trees all around and everything makes a nice picture. This is a fairy tale, so we need compositions that are very strong pictorially.
Ray's first film was literally an amateur production, but it won a prize at the Cannes Film Festival 1956. And ever since, he has insisted on working by his own methods in his own style.
Well, let's get the camera. Well, I'm used to certain things now, which, for instance, I have a cameraman who does the lighting, who used to operate the camera before, but now, for the last 3 films, I've been operating my own camera, and I find, using an Arriflex, that I find the best position to judge the acting is through the lens.
I think he knows exactly what he wants. I don't find it difficult. Sometimes it's advantageous for me because I feel like a cameraman having a camera operator. And I think it's very good for the cameraman because he can see the lighting during the take. And if the cameraman operates his own camera, he's, I think, more busy with the camera operation than to see the lighting.
And if they let me do that abroad, I'm used to a tremendous lot of freedom right from my first film. And that's the main thing that worries me, whether I'll be able to get the freedom that I want to the extent that I have it here now. Let's go. Fine. I did 10 years of advertising work before I came into films. I did the illustration for a book called Pathir Pachali. I was doing graphic designing, advertising work, book work, all sorts of things. And then I did illustration for this book, and it struck me even then that it would make quite a remarkable film. And at the same time, I was doing some illustration and book jacket designing for a new publisher. They published some of my father's books, and I have more or less kept it up. I design posters for my films, do some of the advertising campaign, occasionally design the leaflets, and have also designed the credits. And when I started making films, I almost inevitably wrote my script in the visual form, as you find here. You see, these are scenes. It's a shooting script, actually, but they're not typed. They're in little drawings with notes about the dialogue on the side. And there are also architectural things and in discussions with art directors. I find that this form helps in my discussion with the cameraman, as well as it helps me, because I always have a kind of a visual reference of the scene I'm going to shoot. These are drawings of costumes which the various characters in this film, Charulata, wore in the film, and I have indicated the particular sets and the sequences in which they were used. This is the second character, the husband, and here we have Charulata, the main character, the heroine, with the usual indications down the side. Saris, which we had to specially buy, and blouses with frills and Victorian everything, because this was a period piece, 1870.
With his art director, Ray often revisits the old houses and palaces of Calcutta.
He's very meticulous, very careful, and looks after each little detail, which is ultimately good for the results. What you see on the screen, I like to work very carefully. I don't like to work in a slapdash manner. So if he is difficult, it's better perhaps for the results.
Among the stalls of traditional craftsmen, the smiths, carvers, and idol makers, he soaks up the atmosphere and detail of the crowded city. His intimate awareness of detail, of the texture of daily life, gives to his films the feeling of reality, of truth.
You know, it's the way all sorts of things are put together in a house, in a room, in a small space. We prefer to go always to the locations for fresh ideas.
They're not the conventional iconographic pattern. আপনি ভেতরে কাজ করবেন না এখন? আপনি ভেতরে আসলে
He takes care of all the details, particularly because I think the properties in the room, in a house, belong to the character. That's why the details are so important. The look of the details, the look of the properties, its age, the style, so many things.
Inside the drawing room, that's a wonderful idea, I think.
We know this house very well because we've been here before looking for props. This belongs to Mr. Mitter, whose son was at college with me. And as you can see, they have a wonderful collection of period pieces. And I have made something like 3 or 4 period films. Some of the best pieces of furniture, tables and vases, and clocks and escritoires have come from this house. And we also get props from auction houses on loan, but the best things have come from such houses as this one. This window with the decoration on the pane struck both my art director and myself as being something quite special and very beautiful. So we use this as a model for our windows in my film Charulata.
Calcutta is proud of Ray, the native son who has projected the life of Bengal before the world. Wherever he goes in the city, he's known by people in all walks of life.
If it's in the morning and if it's in the north, you can be chased or surrounded by schoolboys. They sort of pester you for autographs, and sometimes they just follow you wherever you're going. It's been happening for such a long time that it has ceased to surprise me. I think it did in the early stages, but now I'm more or less used to it. And of course, when I'm out on tour or somewhere, even in remote places like Rajasthan, for instance, we were looking for a location and the train stopped at a small station, and we got down and went into a bookstall, and the bookstall owner immediately recognized me and offered me a cup of tea, so it can be a nice thing at times. I'm composing a song for my next film, The Fantasy. It's going to be a sort of a musical. The 2 main characters, 2 youngsters from a Bengal village. One of them is a singer, the other is a drummer. They go out and have all sorts of adventures in various places all over India. And it's really a sort of a musical with dances and even battles, which will be shot to the rhythm of music that I'll compose for the film. This is a piece of music from my film Charulata, which has a Scotch ballad as the basis of the tune. This song was used in a Bengali version by Tagore in the film. It was sung by the heroine. And this comes back several times in the film. And I use Western instruments mainly, such as violins, a vibraphone, a xylophone, cellos, in combination with Indian drums. And this is a common device which I often use in this film, since it had a very sophisticated westernized setting. It needed that. I have never written any music which can be really identified as either folk or classical or Indian or Western, because the films have a look, generally, which are not wholly Indian, even if it's a modern story laid in Calcutta. There are all sorts of things which have very Western connotations. It's so Western that you have to devise a kind of combination thing, you see. It can't be either wholly India or wholly Western. So it's music.
He saw the film not with just an Indian eye, emotional eye, but the eye of the world, I should say like that. And that's why and with his art and his talent, his pictures were very attractive to the West, though the background, the whole thing was Indian, traditionally and pictorially. But the eye was partly foreign too.
In fact, it's the critics who've done it. They've analyzed the themes of my films, and they've arrived at the conclusion that my main theme seems to be the conflict between the old India and the new India. And maybe they're right, because it's there. I mean, I can't deny it. It's there. Let's come back again and again.
It is not just today's India here now, in a particular place, but something deeper than that. It is, I would say, something of India which has been there for a long time, and over and above that, Ray's films chronicle something of the change which has taken place in this body of tradition in India in the last 100 years. I would say that they are, in fact, more profoundly true of Indian life than any other films we've made in India.
That's been largely gone into my films, this question of political involvement. If it's an international question of great import, I've taken part in demonstrations and even made speeches. Only maybe on an average once a year, because the rest of all my time taken up with either shooting a film or planning the next one. I feel very, very strongly that my main business is to make films. Of course, one reacts to all the elements of poverty in the city and all the distress around you, but you keep feeling that as an artist what you have to do is perhaps make a film about them which will bring them into the consciousness of a large section of public, make them feel about this distress or this state of affairs.
সাহিত্যে কেন ভাই ওটা তোমারও দরকার
সাহিত্যে কেন ভাই ওটা তোমারও উপর থেমে যাবে, তোমারও সঙ্গে রিঅ্যাকশনটা এসে যাবে।
আচ্ছা,
বুঝতে পারছো?
সাহিত্যে কেন ভাই ওটা তোমারও
এই দেখলাম দেখি ওর দিকে তাকালাম
ন্যাচারালি সেটা এই যখন। But that is all I can do as a filmmaker, state certain things through the film and try to make the audience, the people, think and be conscious about them. I have never proposed solutions to problems because I think it's beyond my powers to do so. But as an artist, I think it is within my powers to present certain aspects as faithfully and honestly as possible so that it's brought to the consciousness of the thinking man.
2x4, take one.
Action.
ডুন্ডুবি তোমার আজকাল যে রেটে কেস আসছে তাতে আমি ভাবছি ব্যোমকেশের ডায়েরি ছেড়ে শেষে একটা স্ট্রেট রোমান্টিক উপন্যাস লিখবো।
চলবে না
মানে?
কাটবে না।
কাটাবার আর্ট জানা চাই।
তাছাড়া নির্ভেজাল প্রেম জিনিসটা অ্যানালাইজ করো, দেখবে খাদ রয়েছে।